feeling overwhelmed by a busy life without knowing where you are heading?
Realizing your mind has gone completely blank.
If you need
some time and space,
stay, escaping from a hectic life and waiting for your heart.
Temple, a place for self-reflection through peace and calm.
Walking and being in nature.
Slowing down your body and mind.
Staying for a joyful journey to face your inner self.
Focusing on the present moment. Finding the true happiness with yourself.
Emptying. Filling. Temple stay.
In our headlines on this Friday, September 19th, here in South Korea. President Lee Jae-myung is poised to partake in the 80th United Nations General Assembly in New York next week and to preside over United Nations Security Council open debate on artificial intelligence and global peace. Meanwhile, Trade Minister Yeo Han-gu says the trade talks with the U.S. this time around were centered on explaining to Washington why Seoul cannot accept terms similar to those of the investment package that the Trump administration finalized with Tokyo. And the Lee Jae-myung administration is seeking to restore an inter-Korean military pact that was signed 7 years ago under the former Moon Jae-in administration and scrapped under the former Yoon Suk-yeol administration. We start with a briefing by the nation's top security advisor about President Lee Jae-myung's agenda in New York next week as he prepares to join his global counterparts at the 80th UN General Assembly. Arirang's Song Yu-jin starts us off.
Less than a month after his trip to Washington, President Lee Jae-myung is heading back to the United States next week, this time to New York. There, he will make his debut at the United Nations at the UN General Assembly's High-Level Week. National Security Advisor Wi Sung-rak briefed reporters on the president's 5-day trip on Friday.
Through this visit, we aim to highlight South Korea's contributions to the international community, strengthen bilateral ties with key countries, and boost international confidence in our economy.
Upon his arrival on Monday, President Lee will meet with Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock and co-chair of the World Economic Forum, to discuss artificial intelligence and energy transition. He will also sit down with U.S. lawmakers calling for Congress to play a more active role in advancing South Korea-U.S. relations. The spotlight will fall on Tuesday and Wednesday. On Tuesday, Lee will address the UN General Assembly in front of some 190 heads of state and government.
Through this address, President Lee will declare South Korea's restoration of democracy, outline his administration's vision for the Korean Peninsula, and share how we can contribute to global peace and prosperity.
He's also set to hold bilaterals with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, as well as the leaders of France, Italy, and Poland. However, Wee said a summit with U.S. President Donald Trump is not planned, given their recent face-to-face last month. Then on Wednesday, President Lee will chair an open debate at the UN Security Council on maintaining international peace and security through artificial intelligence. This will mark the first time a South Korean president chairs such a session, made possible by Korea's rotating presidency of the 15-member body this month. Finally, on Thursday morning, Lee will host the South Korea Investment Summit in Manhattan, where he will encourage greater investment in South Korea to heavyweight financiers and business leaders. The UN General Assembly's High-Level Week is widely seen as the world's biggest stage for multilateral diplomacy. Attention will be on what message President Lee delivers and what diplomatic and economic gains he'll achieve from his New York trip. 송유진, Arirang News.
The station you're watching, Arirang TV, hosted a special Korea Day event in New York ahead of President Lee Jae-myung's attendance at the UN General Assembly. The event took place on Wednesday local time at Citi Field during a Major League Baseball game between the New York Mets and the San Diego Padres. Promotional videos of popular Korean travel destinations and its heritage were shared on the stadium's large screens to offer the audience there a visual treat of K-culture. The head of South Korea's latest trade delegation to the U.S. says the talks this time around were centered on explaining to Washington why Seoul cannot accept terms similar to those of the investment package that the Trump administration finalized with Tokyo. Our Moon Hae-ryun has more.
Minister for Trade Yeo Han-gu is back in Seoul after high-stakes talks in Washington that could reshape tariffs, investment, and even visa rules between South Korea and the United States. Speaking to reporters at Incheon Airport on Friday, he said that the main objective of the trip was to highlight key differences between Korea and Japan in terms of U.S. negotiations.
We are presenting various objective data and analysis to make clear that Japan and Korea are different, and we are doing our best to persuade the U.S. side.
Yeo's visit, which began on Monday, comes after follow-up negotiations stalled despite a major trade deal reached back in July. Under that deal, Seoul agreed to invest $350 billion in the U.S., while both sides pledged to lower tariffs on autos from 25% to 15%. But the deal has yet to be implemented. Just last week, U.S. Commerce Secretary Lutnick warned that Korea must accept the agreement or pay tariffs, signaling Washington's growing impatience. Japan, which sealed its deal earlier, committed to a larger $550 billion investment and signed a memorandum that heavily favored the U.S. in profit sharing. In exchange, Japan's auto tariffs were lowered to 15% and implemented earlier this week. Yeo emphasized the urgency of finding a quick solution.
We fully recognize the seriousness of the situation, and we are making every effort to resolve the issue as quickly as possible.
Beyond trade, Yeo pressed the U.S. to resolve a visa dispute after immigration authorities detained Korean workers at a Hyundai LG battery plant in Georgia. He wrapped up his remarks by reaffirming Seoul's stance that national interest remains the government's top priority. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Hyundai Motor Company has voiced hopes for a prompt deal between Seoul and Washington to lower U.S. tariffs on Korean-made automobiles and their parts to 15% from the current 25%. Our correspondent Moon Ji-young has details.
Hyundai Motor Company President Jose Munoz says he hopes South Korea and the United States can quickly reach a follow-up trade agreement to lower U.S. tariff on Korean-made vehicles. He made the remarks at the 2025 CEO Investor Day in New York on Thursday local time, where he unveiled the company's mid to long-term strategy. He noted that the company's financial guidance was based on the 25% tariff rate, but said a reduction to 15% would bring results close enough to maintain the company's goals. This comes as Hyundai has already adjusted its operating profit margin target downwards by 1 percentage point to 6 to 7%, a move significantly impacted by the 25% tariff, unlike the 15% applied to Japanese competitors.
We all hope that both governments will be able to achieve an agreement that would pose a strong performance of the company, even if on the 15%.
In response to these tariff hurdles and to solidify its presence in the U.S. market, the automaker has ramped up its investment to approximately $11 billion for the 2025 to 2028 period. The move is aimed at expanding U.S. production capacity and establishing a robotic ecosystem. Furthermore, with the termination of tax credits under the IRA dampening EV market prospects, Hyundai has pivoted its mid to long-term strategy. EV sales targets have been replaced with a focus on eco-friendly vehicles, including hybrids. The company also plans to launch its first mid-size pickup truck before 2030 in North America, targeting one of the largest segments in the industry. On the recent detention and release of more than 300 South Korean workers at its battery plant construction site in Georgia, Munoz clarified that the workers were involved in the final testing of advanced battery production technology. He also expressed hope for solutions on short-term technical work visas.
We hope the US and Korea can work on mutually beneficial solutions for short-term business travel, especially for specialized technical expertise.
This year marks Hyundai Motor's first overseas unveiling of its mid to long-term strategy and financial plans, interpreted as emphasizing a nimble response to complex global auto market crises, including in the U.S. 문지영, Arirang News.
In other news, U.S. President Donald Trump has voiced disappointment over his Russian counterpart's aggression against Ukraine. Our Lee Seung-jae covers his remarks and more.
U.S. President Donald Trump says Russian President Vladimir Putin has really let him down, citing stalled peace efforts as Russia's war in Ukraine drags on. Speaking to reporters on Thursday, Trump said he once thought the conflict would be the easiest to resolve because of his personal relationship with Putin.
The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with President Putin, but he's let me down. He's really let me down. It was going to be Russia and Ukraine, but we'll see how that turns out.
He admitted that it has become his biggest disappointment, adding that he still hopes for some good news soon. Over in Moscow, President Putin announced that more than 700,000 Russian troops are now deployed in Ukraine's combat zones and also spoke of job quotas for soldiers with government bodies.
There are more than 700,000 now on the front line, so we should choose among them. But we should choose those who are motivated and are prone to this kind of work.
Putin said while not all servicemen will see themselves as future civil servants, the Russian leader backed the idea of granting veterans additional privileges once they return home. He also stressed that achieving victory in Ukraine remains Russia's key task and highlighted demographic challenges as the next priority for his government, signaling that the war effort and domestic stability remain closely linked in his agenda. The remarks underscore two very different perspectives. President Trump voicing frustration over the lack of progress toward peace, and President Putin doubling down on a long-term campaign that continues to reshape both Ukraine and Russia's internal policies. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung says his government will do what it should step by step to restore the spirit of the September 19 Inter-Korean Military Agreement. 7 years ago today, the two Koreas penned the military pact to end hostilities near their border. Taking to social media, the president emphasized that peace is the foundation of democracy and economic prosperity. While acknowledging the challenge of rebuilding trust, he nonetheless pledged to proceed with patience. He also reaffirmed that Seoul has no intention of pursuing unification by absorption. Indeed, the Lee Jae-myung administration is seeking to restore the inter-Korean military pact that was signed 7 years ago under the former Moon Jae-in administration and scrapped under the former Yoon Suk-yeol administration. Our Oh Soo-young touches upon the task ahead.
Signed in 2018, the September 19th Inter-Korean Military Pact aimed to lower tensions along one of the world's most heavily armed borders, the Inter-Korean Military Demarcation Line. Amid dialogue between South and North Korea, then President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un agreed to cease hostilities across land, air and sea, moving quickly to remove frontline guard posts and work towards the demilitarization of the inter-Korean border. They also banned artillery drills and large-scale field exercises near the border and created buffer zones at sea, prohibiting live fire training and naval maneuvers. In the air, the pact established no-fly zones to stop reconnaissance flights and live fire exercises. The two Koreas further agreed to work on the joint recovery of war remains and the shared use of the Hangang River estuary. However, after the US-North Korea summit in Hanoi broke down in February 2019, Pyongyang resumed missile launches and later that year a coastal artillery drill in the West Sea, violating the Inter-Korean Pact. Tensions further rose in 2022 when 5 North Korean drones entered the South's airspace, breaking the agreement's ban on hostile aerial acts. And the North in 2023 launched a military reconnaissance satellite, violating UN Security Council resolutions. This prompted Seoul to partially suspend the no-fly zones and decide on resuming surveillance flights along the border. The next day, North Korea declared it would terminate the agreement. After the regime flew a series of trash-carrying balloons to the south, Seoul also declared an end to the agreement in June last year. While North Korea has continued to seek a nuclear state status and develop its weapons of mass destruction, South Korea's new government this year is seeking to build trust and diplomacy with Pyongyang. After a series of dovish gestures since its inauguration, President Lee Jae-myung last month ordered ministries to work towards restoring the September military agreement proactively in stages.
The essence of the pact is not so much removing the security risk, but it's the most basic safety apparatus to prevent accidental clashes or war from breaking out. So it doesn't necessarily resolve the situation, but without it, the situation is much more dangerous.
While proponents deem it an essential confidence-building and risk reduction measure, others have long voiced concerns that given the North's track record of literally blowing up deals, South Korea would only be letting its guard down. In any case, North Korea for now seems disinterested in rapprochement, particularly as it's benefiting from aiding Russia's war in Ukraine.
If the war ends quickly, North Korea-U.S. dialogue will draw closer, and the possibility of inter-Korean dialogue cannot be ruled out. However, if the negotiations to end the Ukraine war stretch on, North Korea will maintain its stance of treating the South and the U.S. as hostile states, applying pressure on the South.
While inter-Korean relations remain elusive, the fate of the dormant agreement also remains uncertain. But what's clear is that conditions on the Korean peninsula and its surrounding geopolitical environment have changed vastly over the last 7 years, making terms for military restraint that much harder to achieve and perhaps all the more necessary. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, President Lee Jae-myung has vowed to expand opportunities for young people, linking the absence of opportunity to the presence of strife. To take a listen.
이 모든 문제의 원천은 기회 부족이고, 기회의 부족은 저성장으로부터 오는 것이고, 성장 잠재력이 떨어지니까 현실 성장률이 떨어지고, 성장률이 떨어지니까 기회 총량이 줄어들고, 그러니까 더 좌절해서 결혼 안 하고 아이 낳지 않고 계속 악순환이 되고 있습니다. 이 악순환을 이제 전환을 해야죠.
Speaking at a town hall meeting with young adults here in Seoul on this Friday, he made note of the excessive competition and gender conflict among young job seekers in the labor market. The meeting today comes ahead of Youth Day tomorrow, that is September 20th, freshly designated by the top office to promote the interests of young adults. E-commerce giant Amazon and Korean cosmetics companies are partnering to promote K-beauty on the global stage. Our business correspondent Park Jun-an covers this collaboration.
With the theme K-beauty glowing up the world, South Korea's key players in the cosmetics industry gathered in Seoul alongside officials from Amazon Global Selling. The event highlighted the success of Korean beauty products and the company's long-term vision using Amazon's global commerce platform.
K-beauty is no longer just about effectiveness and price. It is now positioning itself as a complete experience for global consumers. Our goal is very clear. We want to introduce more K-beauty brands to customers worldwide and highlight the unique competitive edge K-beauty brings to the global market.
Korean cosmetics exports have seen a dramatic surge over the past 12 years. From 2012 to 2024, South Korea's cosmetics exports surged by over 850%, showing a strong annual year-on-year growth trend. Vice Chairman Yoon Sang-yeon of Kolmar Holdings, a leading cosmetics manufacturer in South Korea, said companies must create blockbuster products that deliver strong sales and symbolize success.
To achieve success, I would like to emphasize that one must relentlessly improve their products and continuously evolve by incorporating customer feedback. You must build the product's competitiveness based on understanding consumers' needs and then leverage that competitiveness to grow it into a blockbuster product.
A health and beauty general manager at Amazon US stores says the key to success lies in connecting customers with the brand, enabling them to actively engage while shopping.
K-beauty is our fastest growing beauty segment. I'm proudly saying it's growing faster than any other business segment at Amazon today. The growth is not only because we have fantastic brands, your brands, but it's because also we have incredible customer engagement.
The CEO and founder of APR Corporation, which developed the globally successful Medicube Booster Pro, defined irreversible experience and fierce competition as the solutions for success.
Meeting customers' needs is customer success. That mindset drove us to improve our products, which customers clearly appreciate.
Leveraging Amazon's global e-commerce capabilities and South Korea's expertise in beauty product development, the Korean cosmetics industry is poised for boundless growth, giving it an even stronger competitive edge. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
Up next, we take you to an expo currently taking place at a county in the center of the country that celebrates traditional music, including Korea's K-gugak, which my colleague Park Hyo-bin is quick to point out was around long before K-pop. Do take a listen.
Under the cool autumn breeze, Korea's lively rhythms fill the air. Performers play traditional Korean instruments such as 꽹과리 and 장구 to the beat of 풍물, lifting the spirit of the crowd. The World Traditional Music and Arts Expo has opened in Yeongdong-gun County, Chungcheongbuk-do Province, known as the home of Korea's traditional music. It's also known as the Yeongdong World K-gugak Expo, with K-gugak meaning traditional Korean music.
There are 33 of us here today for the expo. It's bigger than I expected, and even at the entrance, we were saying how well it's set up. We'll look around some more. I've always loved traditional Korean music.
I really loved it. The atmosphere was so lively, and I'll definitely come back if they hold it again.
It isn't only Korean music that draws attention. A variety of sights, dances, and stage acts paired with traditional sounds captivate visitors. One of them is Bonanori, similar to a plate-spinning show that's part of the UNESCO-listed Intangible Cultural Heritage, Namsadangnori. The basic step known as ipchum, which underlies every movement in Korean dance, highlights the beauty of traditional performance. Alongside these traditional acts, there's also fusion K-gugak that combines Korean heritage with modern music, with more than 200 performances and busking sessions in total. The expo isn't just about Korean sounds. Musicians from 30 countries, including China, Russia, and the Czech Republic, are sharing their instruments and performances, creating a true cross-cultural stage. The organizing committee says it hopes this exchange will broaden appreciation for world traditions and help K-gugak reach a wider global audience.
The Expo is not only Korea's first, but also the first of its kind worldwide.
Here, you can experience the past, present, and future of Korean traditional music and enjoy outstanding dance and music from 30 invited countries, all in one place.
The expo shows that tradition, when shared, can become a language the whole world understands. The Yeongdong World K-gugak Expo runs until October 11th, bringing Korea and the world together through music. Park Hyubin, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. U.S. President Donald Trump has publicly praised the indefinite suspension of Jimmy Kimmel Live by ABC, following remarks Kimmel made about Charlie Kirk's death. Trump also said some TV networks should have their licenses taken away. ABC, owned by Disney, announced on Wednesday evening that Jimmy Kimmel Live will be suspended indefinitely after the Federal Communications Commission threatened action over Kimmel's September 15th monologue. In that monologue, Kimmel had condemned reactions by some conservatives to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, suggesting they were trying to score political points. President Trump reacted on his social media on Thursday, celebrating the suspension and calling Kimmel talentless. He also said the show had bad ratings, while urging other late-night hosts who criticized him to face similar repercussions. Meanwhile, the chairman of the FCC said broadcasters will be held accountable to the public interest. Mass protests erupted across France as hundreds of thousands of workers, union members, and citizens mobilized to reject the government's proposed budget cuts. Union leaders estimated that over 1 million people took part, while the Interior Ministry estimated that there were around 500,000 protesters and that 80,000 police officers were deployed. The protests are against an austerity plan outlined by former Prime Minister François Bayrou, which includes cuts in public spending, possible elimination of holidays, pension adjustments, and trimming benefits. Thursday's strikes follow the Block Everything anti-government protests that took place earlier and come a week after the appointment of new Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu. A United Nations Security Council resolution that demanded an immediate, permanent ceasefire in Gaza, the release of all hostages, and access to humanitarian aid deliveries was vetoed by the United States on Thursday. 14 non-U.S. members were in favor of the resolution, drafted by 10 non-permanent members, but it was blocked by the U.S. veto, the sixth time Washington has used the measure in the nearly 2-year war. The U.S. justified its veto by saying the resolution failed to condemn Hamas sufficiently and did not explicitly recognize Israel's right to self-defense. London Fashion Week kicked off on Thursday and will run through September 22nd. There are 50 catwalk shows, 19 presentations, over 60 side events, and more than 150 designers participating. The British Fashion Council has taken steps to improve designer access, waiving participation fees for official schedule shows and increasing support, particularly for emerging designers. Early highlights include the runway debut of Maximilian Rayner, who is known for using sustainable materials, such as fabric scraps. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
Autumn rain has been falling across the country today. There will be heavy rain between tonight and early tomorrow morning. In particular, strong and heavy rain of 30 to 50 millimeters per hour will fall in Chungcheongnam-do province and the western parts of Jeollabuk-do province. Rain will mostly stop tomorrow morning. With rain falling, the temperatures stayed cool even in the middle of the day. Today's daytime temperature in Seoul only rose to 21 degrees Celsius and will rise to 24 degrees tomorrow, lower than the average temperature for this time of year. Tomorrow morning will start cool at 18 degrees in Seoul, 16 degrees in Chuncheon. Daily highs will move up to 26 degrees in Daejeon, Gwangju, and Gyeongju, 28 degrees in Jeju. It will rain all over the country again next Wednesday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. Do stay with us and thank you for now.
A country where traditional and modern cultures coexist.
Where you can explore spectacular landscapes and nature.
Savor the delights of traveling at every turn.
Where? Korea, of course.
There are some must-visit places in Korea. Ones that appear in every tour guidebook: Hangang River, Gyeongbokgung Palace from the Joseon Dynasty, and
Yes, these are essentials, but I want to go somewhere a little different. I don't have to follow the guidebook. For example, filming locations for K-pop music videos or K-dramas and movies.
traveling is all about taking it slow. A long walk at your own pace, or even zoning out somewhere quiet. Doesn't it sound relaxing?
You travel for the experience, trying something new in a foreign place, de-stressing and making lifetime memories, taking tons of pictures along the way.
70% of the Korean territory is mountainous. Naturally, hiking is a very popular pastime in Korea. Not your kind of activity? Trust me, the view will make the effort worth it. Just catch your breath by the cold stream in the valley.
Korea is surrounded by the sea on three sides. From the beach, you can enjoy a wide open view, as well as various water activities. But the riverside is great too. There's plenty to see and do.
If you're in Korea, you can't miss the night view full of dazzling lights.
Yes, even the same place can have a totally different vibe at night.
Want to make unforgettable memories?
How about traveling to all corners of Korea? Join us next time to explore more about Korean culture.
The Korean wave is drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% since rate in April. Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million with this locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang.
The U.S. Federal Reserve lowers its benchmark interest rate by 25 basis points to mark the first cut since last December, amid concerns of the labor market and economic growth. With more on Press Perspective. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Friday, September 19th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. Today we start with the U.S. Federal Reserve's rate reduction and the reasons behind it before moving on to its ripple effects on the stock market and trade talks between Seoul and Washington. For more on this, I have Celia Ferretti with French daily Le Croix here in the studio. Celia, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
I also have Professor Oh Jun-seok at Sookmyung Women's University live on the line. Professor Oh, as always, it's great to have you with us.
Good evening, Sunny.
Right, we'll start here in the studio. Celia, let's start off then with a recap, perhaps, of the U.S. Federal Reserve's latest policy decision and its implications.
Yeah, exactly. The U.S. Federal Reserve made an important move this week by lowering its benchmark interest rate by 1/4 percentage point and signaling that 2 more cuts might be happening before the end of the year. This was widely expected but still gives markets a lot to digest. Fed Chair Jerome Powell described this week's move as a risk management cut, noting that the balance of risk facing the U.S. economy has shifted. The labor market is cooling, while the inflationary pressure is rising, particularly from the rising price of goods imposed by the tariffs that Trump made over the last year. And so all of this pressure is building, and consumer price rose 2.9% in August, the highest since January. So the pressure is real, and Powell warned that the inflationary effect from tariff could continue well into next year. Despite President Trump's push for a more aggressive easing, Powell made clear that there was a little appetite among policymakers for a half-point cut, saying that the current pace of policy adjustment is appropriate for now. So the significance here is twofold. First, the Fed is trying to safeguard growth as the labor market slows, but at the same time, it's keeping a close eye on inflationary risk that could worsen if tariff comes higher in the months ahead.
Right. Professor, Celia did touch upon this, but what do you believe drove the decision for the rate cut? And what are your thoughts regarding the timing of the rate cut? I mean, some claim it was timely, others insist it was long overdue. What are your thoughts?
This first rate cut since last December is expected to kick off a series of additional reductions, which should help bring down borrowing costs and which may help increase bank loans, housing loans, and purchase power in the market. As to the timing of the rate cut, I could say 25 basis points down would be a timely decision. By the way, what the rate cut means in economics, while you drive a car, finding a gas station, there is a lever on the pump panel. That is called the interest rate. When you start to lever down pumping fuel into an engine, that's the rate cut. Before you down the lever, you should check the gauge in your car and whether the engine is off and so on. If not properly treated, exposed to risk, you may spill over the fuel on the floor and the car might go into flame. The risk factors of rate cut might be at this time and mainly 2 things: inflation and unemployment. Inflation ripped through the post-pandemic economy and prompted the bank to raise interest rate in 2022, which has recently come down significantly. But it is also true that in recent months, inflation has ticked higher and higher. As Mr. Celia commented, price rose 2.9% over the 12 months, the fastest pace since January, and still above the Fed's 2% target rate. And next, the unemployment rate. It remains low at 4.3%. Not a bad economy, however. When I borrow Jerome Powell's expression, from a policy standpoint, it's challenging to know what to do. There is no risk-free path right now. Mr. Powell's accounting another risk factor. Even the job market seems solid. What is worried about is That is Trump's economic policy, including tax cuts, tariffs, and mass detention of migrant workers, might cause inflation to flare back up again. In many ways, it is no surprise that Fed sets interest rate independent of the White House cutting by 25 basis points. Very timely and cautious action, I might say.
Right. Now, earlier, before the actual rate cut, Celio, anticipation over a potential cut actually drove stock markets here as well as those abroad to new highs. Could you walk us through the rally that the local stock market, that is the South Korean stock market, saw this week?
Yeah, it's quite a positive news. Actually, this week's South Korea stock market has been on an impressive run, hitting a new all-time high and marking 10th straight session of gains. The benchmark Kospi closed Monday at a bit more than 3,400, surpassing the record set just last Friday. The main driver of this rally was the government decision also to scrap a planned capital gain tax hike on equity holders. Officials had considered lowering the threshold, but investors worried that the move would hurt the demand. And by keeping the bar at 5 billion won, the government reassured markets and reinforced confidence in domestic equities. Foreign investors were especially active, buying more than 260 billion worth of shares, while local institutional and retail investors locked in some profits. The steady inflow from abroad also helped sustain momentum and highlight Korea's relatively low level of foreign ownership, leaving room for maybe more foreign ownership in the future. Investor sentiment also benefited from global factor, as you said, with the U.S. Federal Reserve meeting planned for the week. Expectation of a possible rate cut have boosted appetite for risk assets across Asia. And the backdrop has added fuel to the rally, even as some sector like auto and shipbuilding lagged. But overall, I would say strong performances in tech and chemical stocks, especially in Korea, combined with policy stability and foreign inflows, have kept Kospi winning streak alive over the last 10 sessions. And while analysts do caution of a potential volatility and after such sharp gains, for now the rally reflects growing confidence in South Korean stock market.
Right, and staying with the stock market, Professor O, my next question to you is actually the title of a recent article by American news agency UPI. Will the South Korean stock market overcome the Korea discount? And of course, Professor O, could you start off with a quick definition of that phrase, Korea discount, for the sake of our viewers who may not be familiar with it?
Even though it is not academic terminology, Korea discount refers to the tendency of a Korean stock to be undervalued compared to global peers. I believe a market is very, very honest, but value is aggregated sum of expected cash flow over discount rate. Even though the sum of cash flow is equal, as discount rate of Korean stock is higher than peer group, so the value of the stock becomes undervalued. The higher discount rate by global investor makes Korea discount. Discount rates are made by risk-free rate plus risk factors. As risk-free rates are equally constant, higher discount rate comes from higher risk factors, which is surrounded by Korean stock market, measured by global investors. What makes higher risks when global investors enter Korean market? Korean government has tried consecutively to deal with Korean discount by revitalizing the capital market. In response, the voluntary plans have been submitted under the government-led corporate value program. All top 10 business groups in Korea, including Samsung, SK, Hyundai Motors, have submitted plans to boost their corporate value. That appears to be working, as shown by the strong share price in recent months. The Kospi-listed companies that have submitted such plans spiked 34.1% on average in January-August period. Could it be continued? I doubt that is because market is always much smarter and more desperate than government. Political gestures could burst emotionally into tears and give affirmative signals to global investors, but there should be a limit to gain confidence and capital from the global investors. What is needed most? Korea shows more concrete evidence of transparency, trust, and stability of the Korean capital market more than anything else.
Right, transparency and stability then. Celia, moving forward, Trade Minister Yohan Gu is back in the country following his latest trade talks with officials over in the US. What's the latest with regard to tariff trade talks between Seoul and Washington?
Talk between Seoul and Washington remain tense, but still ongoing, and South Korea top trade negotiator was in Washington this week to follow up on the $350 billion investment pledge, even as controversy still lingers over the recent U.S. immigration raid at a LG Hyundai plant in Georgia. To recall, more than 300 Korean workers have been detained in that raid, and also they've since been released. Still, the incident has fueled a lot of criticism in Seoul over to know if really it's worth it to invest in the U.S. anymore. And the negotiations for now are focusing on the trade deal that was reached back in July between Seoul and Washington. At the moment, at the summit in the White House, nothing has been signed off, even though both leaders pledged foreign investment. So the details have to be negotiated now, and President Trump has yet to issue an executive order to effectively lower the tariff, leaving Korean officials reluctant to commit further without clarity on enforcement. Washington has been pushing Seoul for a Japan-style arrangement, as they done with Tokyo. Tokyo had a $550 billion pledge of investment, but South Korea insists that those terms are simply not feasible for the Korean economy. Official argues that the Korean economy is smaller and that investment could destabilize currency markets. Critics add also that simply paying higher tariff might be cheaper than actually investing in the US, considering the whole political turmoil these days. And at the same time, Seoul has signaled that the immigration rate will remain on the table and will need to be fixed if the relationship wants to go further. Korea must defend the right of its workers and find a solution for this visa situation if they want Korean company to invest in the US, build factories there, and bring their workforce there. So for now, there's a lot of tension, a lot of political sensitivities between Washington and Seoul. Still, talks remain ongoing, and we'll have to wait a bit more to see a final conclusion.
Right, and staying with this issue, Professor, Reuters has pointed to the foreign exchange implications of the $350 billion investment fund as hindering trade talks between South Korea and the US. Could you explain this for us, Professor Oh?
More than anything else, the characteristics of economics, as well as the size of economics, Korea cannot be compared with that of Japan. In case of Japan, the $550 billion pledge to invest in the United States in exchange for a lower tariff. Tokyo agreed to transfer money within 45 days after the U.S. select a project, and that available free cash flow from investment would be split evenly until they reach an allocated amount, after which 90% would go to the United States. And the United States request the same and equal decision from Korea. But Korean officials had argued that the package would mostly comprises loan and guarantees, which limited direct investment, and they could not accept the terms similar to those of a $550 billion investment package finalized this month by Japan. Korea's economy much smaller than Japan's. It had a current account surplus of $99 billion US dollars last year, compared with Japan's surplus of nearly $200 billion US dollars, and then central bank's foreign reserves of $415 billion in August. Korea had experienced the deep impact of financial crisis. Since suffering traumatic capital flight in the late 1990s, Korea has retained a tight grip on its currency market. It started opening to foreigners, but there is still no offshore market to trade the won. The state status of Korean won is not a key currency, while Japanese yen is widely used as a key currency, which implies Japan has more reserve to resort when it's needed to handle the foreign exchange shock, but Korea has not. Market experts say that $40 billion needed by the state pension fund every year for its overseas investment is only the heavy burden. So it is expected that the investment package will generate a dollar demand of around $100 billion each year from 2026, which is beyond the affordability of the Korean economy. At least Korea needs more time to prepare for risk management, for example, swap contract with other countries, and the affordability of the economy should be treated definitely differently from that of Japan.
I see, which is why Celia was saying there were some critics who were saying it's better just to pay the 25% tariff to the US. Right, and staying with trade, Celia, there's also been quite a bit of media coverage here in the country about South Korean autos losing their competitive edge to their Japanese counterparts in the American market as Japan sees a lower 15% tariff while South Korea sees a 25% tariff. Could you put this reality into some perspective for us?
Well, this really highlights how much tariffs are impactful on local economies. In the US auto market, starting Tuesday, Japanese car will see tariff fall from 27.5% to 15%, while Korean automakers will suffer still 25% amid the stalled trade negotiation, as we just mentioned. On paper, Korean cars should be cheaper. For example, the Kia hybrid retails at around $30,000 compared to $32,000 for a similar model in Toyota, for example. But once you apply those tariff rates, the Kia model becomes more expensive than the Japanese one, which force companies like Hyundai, for example, to absorb cost and sacrifice profitability if they want to stay competitive in the US market. This is particularly tough timing because Hyundai and Kia have been expanding aggressively in hybrids. Their US sales climbed to around 90,000 units in 2021 to more than 220,000 last year, and they're already up nearly 50% this year. So they really invested a lot, and they expect a return of this investment. But Toyota and Honda, the Japanese brands, still dominate the market with a combined 68% of shares in the US market, which just compared to just 12% for Hyundai and Kia for now. Looking ahead, Hyundai does plan to build a hybrid production line at its site in Georgia, but that won't come until next year, and maybe even more delayed with the current issue. And because meantime the company is grappling with US restriction on immigration and the whole visa situation. So in short, for now, tariffs are giving an edge to Japanese companies, and South Korea also needs to reach a deal with the US quickly if they don't want to lag too much in the competition.
Right, and against this backdrop, Professor O, the South Korean economy is expected to grow less than 1% this year. What are your prospects? I mean, do you envision, Professor, a further downward revision, or do you see the possibility of an upward revision before the end of the year? What are some of the variables, if you will, that you believe that you would like to highlight with regard to our economic growth for 2025?
Thank you, Sunny. The Korean economy is projected to grow by 0.8% in 2025, weighed down by a contraction in construction and deteriorating trade condition. So there is a slim chance of upward revision. Korea faced a double whammy in the second half, declining domestic consumption inside and trade uncertainty outside. In the July-December period, there is a projection while auto parts and machinery industry could see the drop of 6.5% and 3.8% respectively due to U.S. tariffs. Domestic demand has yet to show meaningful recovery as political instability continues to weigh on consumer sentiment. Growth in private consumption has slowed, particularly in service sectors such as accommodation and food services. Meanwhile, the downward pressure from high interest rate and sluggish construction orders suggests that the weakness in domestic demand may moderate over time with a lag. What about external soundness? It really matters a lot for Korean economy, which accounts to nearly 60% of total GDP. However, export conditions have deteriorated sharply as the U.S. tariffs were raised on a wide range of products, and therefore trade-related uncertainty has risen to an unprecedented level. Despite the robust semiconductor export until recently, overall export has weakened amid sluggishness in other sectors, and the conditions are expected to deteriorate further following the U.S. tariff hike. In light of these domestic and external circumstances, the Korean economy is projected to face slower growth than expected before, and then there is a slim chance of upward revision. Considering the continued decline in Korea's potential growth trajectory, now is the very time to maintain a policy of structural economic reform to enhance the competitiveness of the Korean economy.
Right, I see. On a more optimistic note, Silio, Hyundai Engineering Construction, it recently secured a seawater treatment plant order from Iraq. Could you tell us a bit more about this order and its significance?
Yeah, this is a very significant deal for Hyundai Engineering and Construction. The company just announced it has won a $3 billion contract to build a massive seawater treatment in Iraq. The project is part of Iraq Water Infrastructure Program, a state-led initiative to support the oil production of the country. The plant will be located in Khor al-Zubayr port, about 500 kilometers southeast of Baghdad. And once completed, it will be able to transfer water to the oil production point, the bigger one in the countries in the south, because the country, Iraq, is planning to double its production of crude oil by 2030. The construction is set to begin in November and should be completed by the end of 2029. The project is being led by a French company, Total Energy, in partnership with Qatar Energy and Iraq Basra Oil Company. This contract represents Hyundai's second largest contract in Iraq, after the $6 billion refinery project in Karbala completed last year. For Hyundai, this not only consolidates its presence in the Middle East, but also become more trustful for the country, and also can gain experience from partnership with other companies. And in the coming years, maybe we'll see more projects coming from Hyundai in the Middle East.
Right, hopefully. All right, Celia, thank you so much for that optimistic piece of news, as always. And Professor Oh over at Sookmyung Women's University, as always, thank you so much for your insights. We greatly appreciate it.
Pleasure is mine.
Right, that ends this edition of Press Perspective. Do have a great weekend and do join us again next Monday. Thank you for now.
이어온 우리의 지혜가 제천에서 다시 태어났어. 세대를 관통한 선조들의 건강 빅데이터. 빅데이터. 우리의 삶과 들에서 자란 천연물은 단순한 재료가 아니야. K-내추럴. 한국인의 정체성을 담은 바로 살아있는 역사지. 천년의 처방이 첨단 기술과 만나는 순간. 글로벌 천연물 시장의 중심 제천에서 2025년 9월 20일부터 10월 19일까지 천년의 지혜를 담은 미래를 만나봐.
Time to set the facts straight. Get Korea right. K-culture is sweeping the globe. K-pop, K-drama, K-movie, K-food, and even K-beauty. Korean cultural content is gaining more and more fans worldwide. It's indeed the golden age of K-culture. But with this growing interest comes an increase in misinformation about Korea. There's so much inaccurate information out there. Even AI can sometimes get it wrong. So, we must set things straight and correct all the misinformation. So here's the plan. The